Welcome to the Pod Like a Girl podcast with your host, Mia Findlay. This podcast is all about exploring and celebrating women's stories, voices, and experiences through bold and unapologetic conversations. Have you ever felt unsafe going for a run? Has someone catcalled you from a car when you're just trying to go for a walk? Has a man ever engaged you in conversation which feels threatening or creepy when you're trying to get 30 minutes to yourself listening to a podcast at the gym? You might be doing that right now. And when these things happen, how likely are you to downplay them or keep what happened to yourself, either because you don't want to make a big deal out of it or because it could have been worse? I have. And our guest today has too. Turia Pitt is an Australian legend. Her name first became known when Turia was caught in a grass fire in 2011 whilst participating in an ultra marathon in the Australian outback. Despite sustaining burns to 65% of her body, Turia did the impossible. She survived. And then she didn't stop. Turia is a best-selling author of multiple books. She's competed in the Ironman World Championships in Kona. She's a mum to 2 boys, and she's coached 40,000 people around the world. She's lent her bright light and brilliant brain to so many important causes. And now she's helping to illuminate the shameful reality of violence against women in Australia. Earlier this year, Turia surveyed her followers, asking them about their experiences when exercising in public. She wanted to know if the stories of women facing harassment, intimidation, and assault stretched beyond her own community. And they do. We get into some of those numbers in this episode, along with the reactions she received when taking the report to Parliament. But first, I want to share some of the experiences women detailed in the survey. A warning, there are specific details of assault shared, which some may find distressing. Like this first one from a respondent. Went for a run while on holiday in unfamiliar territory. Got beeped at. Men on the worksite heckled me and called me a fat bitch. Or this devastating one from another respondent. I was walking after finishing my exercise routine when a man jumped from nowhere and put his hands inside my shorts. Then he pushed me to the floor. I fell and got my knees bruised. It happened so fast that I couldn't understand what was happening at that moment. I was shaking and then I ran to my house. I was unable to cry and I kept thinking about what I did wrong to give him this opportunity. I blamed myself. Or this one, which I think sums up so many of our feelings. I'm tired of being afraid. How can I be 57 and still get stalked and harassed? Does it never end? So that's what we're here to talk about today. Women deserve to be safe going for a run at any time, in any place, alone. And if we're not, we must not forget that we have a right to be. That these stories and statistics may be common, but they are not normal. And we are not downplaying them anymore. Turia Pitt certainly isn't. Turia, thank you so much for coming and having a chat with us about this amazing report that you've taken to Parliament, but also just about the broader topic of women's safety while out running and exercising. In terms of this report that you took to Parliament, can you talk us through some of the findings that you have in that report, which we'll make available in the show notes as well? What were some of those key findings that you saw coming through in the report that you put together?
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that question. So just to give it a bit of context, this report was an idea that came out of my running group. So I've got a running group. I teach women how to run, and obviously feeling safe while you go for a run or out exercise is pretty important to all of us. And my running group would not shut up about this issue.
Yeah.
They're like, what is being done? What are we doing? What's happening? We need to do something.
Yeah.
So I decided just to, first of all, just get some data, because I knew what my experiences were like when I went running, and I would hear anecdotally in the group what some of the experiences were of our members, and also chatting to girlfriends. But I wanted to see, like, is it just us, or is it like a problem broader? So I put out a bit of a survey, and I asked like questions that I thought were kind of basic, right? Like I asked, if they were ever harassed out for a run, what did that harassment or violence, what did it look like? If they'd done anything to change their running behavior as a result of it.
Yeah.
And I think when I got all the data, put it all together and looked at it, it wasn't really a great picture. So 2,000 people filled in the survey, responded to the survey, which I thought was really good.
Wow.
99, over 99% of the survey respondents identified as a woman.
Mhm.
I didn't find that surprising because my audience is mainly women.
Yes.
Um, but then when the perpetrators of that violence, when we asked the survey respondents to identify the perpetrators, and I get also that, sometimes it's tricky to identify other people's gender,
Yes.
but most of them said that the perpetrator was a man.
Yeah.
So it's this idea of violence against women. It's gendered violence, and it's typically, or what my survey results showed, that it was male violence towards women.
Yes. And some of the ones
Yeah,
that really jumped out at me were, the largest sort of response you got was 66% of respondents had experienced things like catcalling and beeping from a car. Then 30% reported being stalked or followed, and 18.2% reported intimidation tactics, things like blocking your path. And as I was reading through the report, as you said, I was having so many flashes from my own personal experience, but
yeah,
also conversations with girlfriends as well. And something that you put in there, which I thought was so powerful, was the word just, because that's what,
yeah,
well, the amount of times those things have happened to me or have happened to a girlfriend where they don't immediately tell someone because it just feels like it is part of the norm now. And you feel like a bit of a drama queen bringing it up. Um, and the idea, like, is it just us or is it just me? And then realizing as we're all
mm,
giving more voice to it, it's just too much of a shared experience that we're not talking about enough.
yeah, I agree. And I think that word just is something that we probably use to minimize what we've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the survey respondents would be like, I feel lucky because I survived, or it was just catcalling, or just some guy calling me a fat whore out of the car, but I wasn't actually
Yeah.
hurt. And I just think it shows how high our tolerance level is for this kind of behavior. Um, and it's also sort of sad. And I'm not trying to paint a really grim picture, but like just that women don't really feel safe anywhere. Like we're not safe in our home. We're not safe when we go to work. We're not safe if we meet up with girlfriends for dinner. And we're
Yeah.
not safe if we go out for a run.
Yes.
So yeah.
Is there a particular, because as we know, I mean, we're up to 65 women in Australia by this point, and it is midway through October, 65 women who have lost their life to violence this year.
So and just to clarify, lost their lives to violence from the hands of their partner.
Well, it's a bit contentious as far as how,
Okay, okay.
because like some people include, say, the Bondi stabbings and
Got
Samantha
it.
Murphy. Obviously, you're getting this feedback from your running group and, these women who you're
Yeah.
interacting with. For you personally, have there been any particular stories, or was there just a tipping point for you where you went, there is something, because we're all kind of living in the hum of it all the time, right? And then we have these people
Yeah.
like, what is going on? Was there anything in particular for you that really kind of brought it up to the surface?
No, and if I reflect on my own experiences with this sort of stuff, and it's kind of a vulnerable thing to do, right? When you look back at your life and you know, when I was 14, a guy followed me when I was running on the beach, and if I was at the gym on a treadmill, a guy called me asked for a lift home, and I said no, and he called me like a dumb bitch. And then, even when I was training for Ironman, I remember I was running on a path, and a man stood right in the middle of the path with his arms crossed,
Oh my
like
God.
as if to block me. And I don't
Yeah.
know. And this is what my mind does. I'm like, oh, maybe he just wanted to have a chat. But also, like, why the fuck
Yeah.
would you stand in the, somebody's clearly running,
Yeah.
like clearly running, like on a mission.
Mm.
Like, what gives you the right to stand in their path with your arms blocked like a fucking security guard,
Yeah.
you know, across the path? And so what I did at the time is I like didn't finish the run and just turned around and went back. And in my head, I was like, oh, maybe you just wanted to chat. Maybe you just wanted to like ask how my day was.
Yeah.
And I just, again, that's just like that's what our mind does. We try and rationalize things and try and downplay things. So I've, I have had numerous experiences.
Yeah.
Throughout my running group, I'd often see things that were really concerning. So someone saying, I got followed home today, or, another woman said she went for a run and someone was following her and then she called one of her girlfriends and her girlfriend came and drove. So those sort of things weren't rare in our
Yeah.
group. And what we would do is we would like band together and be, oh, like at least nothing happened.
Yeah.
Which reflecting on that, what a stupid thing to say to someone. Um,
But I
but it's
think
just
it's such a
but
human thing to try to like comfort that, and for us to all
yeah,
go, it's okay, it's okay.
yeah, like you're fine, like like nothing happened. So it's actually you're actually so fun, and like just don't run that way ever again. Um, and then I think when Samantha Murphy
Yeah.
went missing, and then is now obviously presumed dead,
Yes.
um, the group got really fired up.
Mm.
And I think that was probably the turning point for me, or like the moment that galvanized me
Yeah.
into like, take doing this survey, taking these actions, trying to get more data, trying to get more of a broader view of what women go through every day.
It's such a crucial piece of the puzzle is, as we say, like taking this out of like this isn't just within your group of girlfriends. It's not just something that's happening to you. It's happening to all of us, and it's happening on repeat. Like when we look at Samantha Murphy, her story just totally negates this whole fantasy that a lot of us want to live
Yeah,
in, that like we have control over this as long as we do it during the day. Like just, don't go out at night and don't go running at night, even though to have the freedom to do that, it's just wild, isn't it? That to women, the fantasy would be, I'd love to just put on my shoes and go for a run at 11 o'clock at night just because I feel like it, right? Um,
yeah,
and then something like the Samantha Murphy case or Marsha Vukotic, who lost her life in a similar way years ago. And the response to that was women just need to be a bit more vigilant. They just need to be a bit more
yeah,
careful. When
yeah.
there aren't these parameters we can put around our behavior to keep ourselves safe. The whole myth that if you just make these choices, then, you're in control of the situation, because it just shines such a spotlight on, as you said before, like this sense of just not being safe anywhere.
Mm,
There aren't
mm.
careful
And
choices we can make.
it was interesting because a lot of the respondents did take note of things that they'd done differently. So they
Mm.
said, oh, I don't run at night anymore,
Yeah.
or I take my dog with me, or I don't wear like revealing clothing, or whatever it is. And it's just so sad to start with that women feel like they have to change their behavior, but then also it's not going to matter anyway.
Yeah.
Like and that's really hard to say, but like what you wear, what time you go,
Yeah.
whether or not you're listening to music, none of it's going to keep you safe.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a real bitter pill for me to swallow. And if you think if there was a driver who was drunk and hit somebody while they were running
Mm.
with their car, and the runner was severely injured or maybe even died, that driver would be at fault. That driver would go to jail. That driver would be culpable. But when it comes to gendered violence against women, it's like, oh, well, maybe she shouldn't have run at 7 a.m. in the morning. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
she should have waited until like 9 a.m. when there's more people around. We're trying to hold women responsible for something that they don't have any control over in the first place.
Yeah, I was listening to the it's called Hannah's story about Hannah Clark who lost her life with her children when
Yeah,
her former
yeah,
partner murdered them. And I don't know the quote off by heart, but it was I think that they're sort of a sociologist, someone who's got an interest in this area, who said it's really easy to take either the passive role with the perpetrator or even to, stand behind the perpetrator because the perpetrator is not asking you to do anything. The perpetrator is in essence actually asking you to do nothing, whereas the victim or the victim population are asking you to take action and to first and
yeah,
foremost take an interest and investigate internally your own thoughts or biases or feelings, and then to actually step up and do something. So that's been, so much of what I think this year's messaging has been, which is we've done a lot of talking and, people like yourself are collating this amazing data, which is what women can do. We can start the conversation. We can go, here's all the information, everyone. But thus far, just us trying to take up the mantle with the action part, nothing is really changing. It's that, coming to the table that we really need to see from men. In these conversations that you've been having and when you've been sharing this information, have you seen men showing up in the conversation either positive, neutrally?
yeah,
Get a
and
pretty passive neutral response.
I hate to say it, but I've seen them showing up neutrally
Mm,
because I think men see it as being women's business,
yeah.
and it's not women's business, it's everybody's business. And I don't think just the two of us just talking about it is going to change things. I
Yeah.
don't think just women talking about it is going to change things. I think we really do need um, men to be interested in this type of stuff, and not to be a passive bystander. And in the report, I used the example of, I don't know if you remember when Thomas Kelly
Yeah.
was coward punched in King's Cross.
Hmm.
Um, that was a devastating outcome. But when that happened, there were significant changes that happened within the city. There was lockout laws. There was a whole campaign
It was
to,
everywhere.
yeah, because before it was called a coward's punch,
Yeah.
it was called being king hit.
Mm,
So they even managed to change the language of how we talk about it.
mm.
So I do think it can be done, but it just needs money and resources and, like some of the best minds out there to be working on this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and to be appropriately funded, like getting this stuff in on the ground. And we are seeing some good stuff from, especially men who are getting involved in this area, like Dave Kramer, who was Hannah Clark's best friend. He now goes and does these behavioral change talks in schools and even at, corporate events, those sorts of things, which is always fantastic to see. In taking this to Parliament, I don't know how much you can tell us about those meetings or sort of the blow by blow, but in terms of some of the reception to that report, how did that actually go as far as their level of sustained interest? It can be hard to keep these things on the top of the agenda. What was
Yeah,
what was sort of the response that you got when you took it to Parliament?
you're right. It can be hard to keep this type of stuff on top of the agenda until someone gets killed going for a run or being outside, which is so horrible,
Mm,
right? The fact that someone needs to die for people to like be like, oh yeah, this isn't actually an area of interest, or this is like actually a newsworthy story. So that's horrible to start with. Um, I did think my meetings at Parliament House were quite, I don't know if I want to say productive. They were interested and they wanted to talk about it,
yeah.
which I saw that as being like, bit of promising feedback.
Mm,
I, of course, will need to follow up on those conversations to make sure like there is actually change happening. But I do think the Labor government, I don't want to get too political, but I do think the Labor government so far has shown um, a pretty strong interest in 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 helping to alleviate issues like this. I know they've released like a new funding package for women and all of that type of stuff. So I do have a lot of faith in the Labor government. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I think I would have questions too if we were dealing with the other side as far as how much
yeah,
sustained funding and interest there would or
yeah,
will be at that point, because it will inevitably happen.
yeah. Yeah, I like they seemed interested. They seemed like it was a good issue that they wanted to, that they were already thinking about.
The frustrating thing is that, when people are talking about, and especially when women are talking about this subject, it can be such a default to want to give women advice as far as, how to keep yourself safe and all that sort of thing, which is really important and really key. But it then sort of backs up that idea that it's on us to prevent these things from happening to us, and, it gives us the impression that we've got more control than we have.
Like, but we're also not doing anything dangerous.
Yeah.
Like, we're going for a run.
Yeah.
Why? I just don't understand why I should have to change my behavior
Mhm.
when I'm doing something that is healthy, good for me, cleansing.
Hurts
I'm
no
not,
one.
I'm not hurting anyone.
Yep.
I'm actually not doing anything bad or illegal.
Yeah.
And then the fact that I have to change something about how I'm running to pacify perpetrators.
Mm.
It's stupid.
Yeah. And it's when I talk to men about this, and they just want to boil it down to things like when I say, well, I don't want to change. I don't want to change where I run because that guy stood across my path and was creepy.
Yeah.
Or because, I was running, like there was a road that I used to run down when I was more of a runner, not such a runner these days. And I was, doing the correct pedestrian thing, and I was on the facing traffic part of the road, and I
Love
was being
it.
a
Love
good girl,
it.
like people pleaser forever. It was a road that I ran frequently. It was really quiet. It was a quiet country road. And these guys in their ute, and I knew the number plate because obviously I'd pay attention to this, when they would cross the road to kind of just put enough air pressure behind me to freak me out. Like they weren't physically going to hit me, but just enough to push me. And part of me goes, you know what? Fuck you. I'm going to be here tomorrow, mate. I didn't even want to come for a run again tomorrow, but I'll be here tomorrow. I hope you're here. And then I think, no, Mia, he's in a car. You probably shouldn't come back to this road, not just tomorrow, but
He's,
ever again.
they're in a car.
Yeah. Still got that
I,
teenage, like, I'm impervious. I'm like, yeah, I'll be fine. When it
I,
gets to you
I,
at 70K, I'll be good.
I do love your fighting, your fighting attitude. Yeah.
Not terribly logical. But then when you talk to men about it, and they're like, oh, well, then just change where you go, or just change what you're wearing, or just change this. And as you say, if the shoe was on the other foot, let's just even take the danger out of it and the risk to life out of it. If men were having to change their daily habits and have that little hum of anxiety and fear and just sitting on their shoulder while they were out, as you say, trying to do something that regulates their system, connects them back to nature, gives them a bit of a zen moment away from a, crazy house for half an hour, an hour,
Mm,
we would be taking action, and we wouldn't even be at the point where people would be harmed or losing their lives. It would just be the inconvenience of it, I think, that would be a
mm.
motivator all on its own.
Yeah, well, you're right. You just have to look at contraception,
Yeah.
don't you? It's like, again, it's something that's women's business, and that women just need to, sort out, do something about. I just want to be able to go for a run,
Yeah.
get it done, not be worried about a weirdo standing in the pathway, not be not feel harassed by some dickhead
Mm.
honking their horn at me. And I want the same for any other woman in Australia as well. As well as feeling safe while we run, though, it would be great if we felt safe at our homes, the one place that should be a place of rest and retreat for us, but unfortunately isn't for
Mm.
so many women out there, and feel safe at our workplaces.
Yeah. 100.
Just be like guys. That would be great.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there things that you wish that you could do, like somewhere you'd love to run on your own or walk on your own, which are bloke would have no problem, like with his headphones on and everything, not having to be aware of his surroundings. Do you have like something that you would love to do that you just know safety is the barrier that stops you from doing it?
Yeah, like there's this area down here. It's like called the Budawang Wilderness Area, right? It's like it's inland a bit through the mountains, and there's like so many guys down here, so many guys who are like, yeah, I just
Yes.
been hiking in the Budawangs for 3 days by myself, and I'm like, I could physically do that.
Mm-hmm.
I am resourceful and resilient enough to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I am also scared that I will run into some weirdo out there who will strangle me and I'll never see my kids again.
Yeah.
And if I say that to my husband, Michael, he's like, darling, just being a bit, that's not going to happen. And it's probably would never happen. But there's also the chance that it might happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I don't do those sorts of things.
Yeah, that's mine too. I say often that Pigeon House Mountain down there, like every time I bring friends down the coast, I'm an excellent host because I'll be like, you think we're here for beach and cocktails? Oh, well, that's
No,
tomorrow.
no, no.
Today, we're doing Pigeon House. So lured you down here, and now we've got this planned because that's my opportunity to do it because I'd love to go and do it. I remember saying it to my mum once. I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to go and do a picture. And we were driving and she went off. She was like, you are absolutely not doing that. There is no chance in hell, not even with a satellite phone and a gun, are you going to do that? Because as you say, it's not just the likelihood or the possibility of something like that happening. Let's say that somebody gave you a guarantee that it wouldn't happen. It's not pleasurable. It's not an enjoyable experience because you're doing it with that sense of anxiety and fear.
Mm,
And
mm.
that's that kind of mental burden and load that women are walking around with all the time, where even if it doesn't happen, it just robs you of either doing it, or if you do it, there's some percentage of enjoyment which is being withheld from you because you have to apportion that to like being on alert all the time.
Yeah, I was training for a mountain run. This is after I had my first son, Huckabye.
Mm.
And because it was a mountain run, I had to do like, mountains. And that was like the closest and easiest kind of thing that replicated a mountain. So I would go out to Pigeon House and I would do it like, I think I did it like 3 times. Yeah, I used to. I just dropped that into the conversation, so you thought I was hardcore. That's right. But like, I would do it without any music,
Yeah.
so I could hear people.
Mm.
And like, again, on one of those times, there was some man who took it upon himself. This is a different man to that other man I described,
Yeah.
to stand right in the middle of the path and make eye contact at me, as if to be like, I want to speak to you, young lady, about something. And like, again, I was like, maybe he just wanted to talk about, maybe he saw a koala or something.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I didn't get any closer to him. I turned around and ran back to my car and
Mm.
like drove away.
Yeah.
So he fucked up that training run,
Yeah.
but and he didn't even have to do anything.
Yes.
Yeah, all he had to do was stand in my path.
And then you'll see, because I was scrolling through a Reddit post the other day where men were being asked, what would women be surprised by if they woke up tomorrow and they were a man? Like, what are the things that are the, worst parts of waking up and, living your life as a man? And a lot of it was about being feared and being seen with suspicion or, women crossing the road and all those sorts of things. And so when men come to this conversation with defensiveness, where they're like, well, I'm sick of seeing the man bashing and I'm sick of being treated with suspicion, etc.
But it is usually the man. That's the and I understand it's not all men. And majority of men are lovely, caring, great humans. But the small minority of men who do attack, like I'm pretty sure isn't that why we call it gendered violence or
Yeah.
male violence against women? And that was part of the reason why I wanted to, I the survey respondents, I wanted them to identify what their gender was,
Mm.
and I also wanted them to identify what the gender was of the perpetrator. And close to 80% of perpetrators
Yes.
were identified as being a man. And that was like if someone said, I don't know, they had a hoodie on.
Mm.
Um, I put that in the category of like they don't know. But like close to 80% were identified as being they were certain that it was a man.
Mm.
And I think even the language that we use too, like when we say harassment, really that is violence. Yelling at someone out of a window and calling them um a slut or a stupid bitch or whatever it is, that is still violence against women.
Yes, and it's, there's a lot of nitpicking that goes on with this because there was that study this year which shows that I think it's more than 1 in 4 Australian men between the ages of 18 and 45 have committed sexual violence against women and have admitted as such. It was just in a survey. And then they felt like they'd been tripped up because harassment was a part of that definition.
Mm,
And so you'll have people who come in and nitpick, but we have to listen to the survivors and the impacted population when we say that harassment it feels incredibly violent and it feels incredibly threatening. And it could just be the precursor to, all of these horrific stories that do end up in these
mm,
horrific murders that we're seeing happening to women, both at the hands of strangers and obviously intimate
mm.
partners or former partners. What do you experience as far as when you hear, especially from other women, given you do run a program which is about helping women connect to their body and movement and nature through this great program that you run with Turia? When you hear this, when you keep hearing these stories, what's the kind of emotion that you feel just in regards to, the impact on you trying to put out this great message and then it's getting undercut by this awful feeling of fear and anxiety?
It's not a very uplifting topic to chat about, and it just feels grim and like what I do won't even make a difference, and it's just something that we have to live with, and just going to hear more of it. But I try and stop myself sometimes and remind myself that sometimes you need people to agitate for change. Sometimes that can be the tipping point. And I look at other things that have happened, like the lockout laws in Sydney, like what happened with the Cowards Punch. I thought that was a really great campaign to change how we talked about it. What sort of things that we as society said, no, that's not appropriate. Enough is enough.
Yeah.
I think something similar needs to be done with violence against women.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that sense of like anger or just frustration at it is so important for women to hold on to because you can do something with that, right? Like if you're just
yeah.
sad and despondent, there's just not a lot you can do with those feelings.
Just watch Netflix when you feel like that.
You have an upcoming book which is sort of adjacent to this conversation, which is also garnering a lot of sort of attention, which is this concept of the mental load, which is a
Mm.
term I've only become familiar with. I mean, I'm single and don't have kids, so I have to research the mental load because the only mental load I'm dealing with is the one I put on myself. But you've got an upcoming book which is just sort of exploring this concept of the mental load which women are carrying.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about? I'd love to know what kind of prompted you or inspired you to get into that subject and what sort of things you're going to be exploring.
Yeah. So can I just give you a bit of advice first, Mia, if you
Um,
are
I
single?
absolutely. Well, I
Or are you seeing
absolutely
someone?
go for
Sorry.
it.
You are seeing someone. Okay. Well, what the research shows is that when you hook up or you get together, I don't even know how do the kids talk about it these
That's
days?
what I was
When
going to
you
say. Hookup. I was like, same generation because hookup is still the language I use, and you talk
okay.
to Gen Z, they've
So
no idea what you're talking about.
or like if you move in together with someone,
Mhm.
even though it feels like a good thing to do to wash their clothes or make their lunch, I would highly implore you, anyone listening, to not do those things
Mhm.
because it sets I think in my opinion and from the writing I've done so far, it sets up some really bad behaviors of just assuring that the woman, and this is in like heteronormative relationships, like that the woman is going to be looking after that sort of stuff. And then if you add kids into the mix, it doesn't get any easier. And
Mm.
so how the book came about, I've got two little boys. My husband works full time. I work full time. We don't have a nanny or anything. So it's just like most people, right? Two parents working full time and you've got kids just doing that juggle. And there's this one night I was, making dinner. I'm like, I was getting burnt. I was cooking meatballs, the little flecks of oil were burning me. The kids were screaming. They're like pulling at my dress.
Yep.
And I looked over at my husband and he was sitting on the couch drinking a beer.
Oh, Jesus.
Now,
Break.
like, so I was just like, I just had this thought, like, why am I doing this stuff? And why is he sitting there drinking a beer?
Mm.
And so that was the catalyst for the book. And I suppose it's just about the the expectations that we have of women, that they have to be caring and nurturing, selfless, put others first, be a good friend, be a good partner, but you've also got to be hot and you've got to be nice and you've
Yeah.
also got to have a career and you've got to be interesting.
Yeah.
And we have all of these expectations on them. And I have found it to be impossible
Mm.
to reach those expectations. And speaking to my girlfriends, they've also found it to be impossible too. So it's kind of an exploration of that.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, I'm so grateful for women who speak about all their varied experiences. Like I'm currently going through the process of realizing I think I'm going to stay child free, which is, quite a taboo topic even now to sort of talk about that openly and like actually making a conscious choice to remain child free and seeing women speak about their child free lives or with children, the realities of both, and really taking this totally unvarnished look into people's lives.
Mm,
It's been so powerful and important, especially for women peeling back, because there's so much pressure put on you, not only to be a certain kind of mother, but to love it all and take no issue with it. So that's what I love about millennial women is that we were really at the forefront of, especially on social media, being like,
are
let's
we millennials? Am I a millennial?
I think so. I'm holding on for dear life to that because otherwise then I'm Gen X and I'm older than I think I am.
How old are you, Mia?
I'm 36. I'll be 37 in
Oh,
December.
oh, I'm 37.
There we
Were you born
go.
in eight? Were you born in 87?
I'm a Saggy, end of 87.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Continue. Sorry,
No,
I interrupted you.
not at all.
Millennials. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that really we were the first ones to be like, here's social media. Let's show the realities of things like depression and anxiety. And now that millennial women have entered motherhood and partnership, they're now peeling back the layer with these stories about, the mental load and that unequal distribution of not just physical labor in the home, but mental labor, all the to-do lists and all those sorts of
Mm,
things.
mm.
So I'm just so grateful whenever somebody's shedding a light because then I think we can make really informed decisions about our life. Let's look at what it actually looks like and then pick which path you want.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
Why do you want to be child free?
Because there's a whole host of reasons. So
Yeah.
I have been in my family, I've been sort of caregiver in a multitude of roles. So
Yeah.
I
Well, that's another thing as well. Sorry, I've
no,
just cut you. I've just asked you a question. Now I've
go for
jumped
it.
in, but like that also that women have to care for not only their children and their partner,
Yep.
but their mum and their
Yep.
dad and their in-laws.
Yes.
And you have this whole like ecosystem of people that you need to look after, but
Exactly.
it's the same expectations aren't placed on men. So sorry, you continue what you were saying, Mia.
No, but it's so true. And it's, I feel like I was on a path to making some choices that I was kind of passively making. I think I was about to end up in a life where I was going to go, how the hell did I get here? Which is never advisable. Don't make choices from that position ever or from fear. But so my dad passed away at the end of 2019 of prostate cancer, and he lived in America. And there's three boys and two girls in our family. And the
Yeah.
two girls are the ones who we packed up our lives and we moved to Massachusetts and we took care of him towards the end of his life. And then I'd sort of had the same role with my grandmother shortly after that, and my mum, who's had to have a few surgeries, etc. And so by the time I got to sort of looking at this next phase of caregiving again, I was like, I just don't know that I've ever been number one on my list or any other list. And I think I'd like to, I think the first 36 years we've done the caregiving. Um, and also the job that I do is, has always been like a lot of holding emotions of
Mm,
other people, etc. I just don't think that I, as a person, would be the best parent I could be without sacrificing 99% of
mm,
who I am. Um,
mm,
but I honestly don't think I would have made such an informed decision if there weren't women who are really pushing against some pretty strong shame being put on them by society to go,
mm,
well, here's what it actually looks like. So now
mm.
that you can see it, does it actually look like something that you want to do?
I have never understood why there's been shame from society if someone wants to be child free.
Mm.
Because I'm like, well, what's the alternative? You want someone who doesn't want children to have a child.
Yep.
Is that a better outcome, is it? It just seems, but
Some of
again,
them.
it's this it's like it's this expectation that we have a room that they have to have that desire
Hmm.
to have kids and to look after them, but also be and always be happy about it, but then also be working in a job that's like fulfilling and interesting and demanding, but then also they've got to be like really hot for their
Yeah.
partner. Then they've also got to cook really nutritious meals,
Yeah.
but they've
Don't want to
also got to
have
be like
sex at the end of the day, like just work
they they
sun up to sundown and then,
they
turn
have to be
that
up
on.
for it
Yep.
anytime,
Yep.
anytime. They can never get tired. They
Yep.
can never like have their roots showing.
No, God forbid.
No, they've got to remember people's birthdays, their
Yes.
in-laws' birthdays.
Yep.
Like it's a lot.
Hmm.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because I think we came with our, we were watching the generation of women who were very like have it all. Like,
Oh, that was my mum.
oh,
My
the
mum had
Sheryl
four
Sandberg
kids.
thing.
Yeah. She had four kids and she had what looked to be like a happy partnership with my
Yeah.
dad. And she wrote these really successful books about life in Tahiti because she's
Amazing.
Tahitian, I'm Tahitian.
Yeah.
But then she got divorced.
Yeah.
Like it's
Tired.
not it's not to be like, well, mom, see, you can't have it all.
Yeah.
But it's just like I just don't think that's realistic.
No, I think our generation is more of like the, do I want to have it all? Or do I just want to have what I want? And can I just figure out what that is? And then can I just do that? Like, or do I have
Yeah.
to tick all the boxes? I think that regardless if you want to be child free or if you have kids, I don't think it's actually about the specific choice that you get judged. I think it's just the whole mechanism of you can't win. Do you know what I mean? Like you have your first kid and then people are like, when you're having the second one, and you're like, I'm I'm just trying to be here right now with this new situation.
Yeah.
They have the
Yeah.
second, and then it's, but what about, you got to have the third. I mean, when's the third coming? So I think it's the zooming out and going, I just think the whole thing might be set up for it doesn't matter what I do, there's going to be like that shame and judgment and pressure
Yeah.
no matter
Yeah.
what. Because I think that's the cycle that we're all meant to kind of be in is trying to chase that all the time.
Yeah, you're so right.
I can't wait to read the book. When is it expected to come out?
Well, it's not out till next October-ish. So it's a while away. And maybe the premise of the book will change somewhat.
Mm.
But I submitted the manuscript last week. So
Exciting.
so they'll either love it
Yeah.
or they'll hate it. And I think realistically it's gonna be somewhere between the two.
Fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure that the women who are reading it right now are going, can we please get this on the shelves immediately?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get my hands on that one. That sounds absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much for chatting to us today. This has been so illuminating, especially, breaking down a little bit of the motivations behind the report, etc. As I said, I will have that linked everywhere. This goes up on YouTube and Spotify, and Apple will have the links to the report for everybody to go and check out. And, I think that there is so much hope in this department when we have people like yourself. As I said to you when we were communicating, you've been such a lighthouse for women in so many arenas. And the fact you're now stepping into this one is so incredibly generous. So just thank you so much for coming and chatting to us today.
Oh, thank you, Mia. It's been really great for me, and I've admired you from afar
Oh,
for a while now. So it was actually really good to meet you over Zoom.